The moment she laughed like I wasn't real, I stopped being the girl who begged people to stay. Some betrayals don't come with yelling or shattered glass. They don't need a scene to feel like a death. Sometimes they arrive quietly, wearing the same perfume you once said smelled like home, in a voice that used to say your name with love, in a laugh you once found comforting. Mine came in the form of two people I trusted more than anyone, and when I saw them, neither even flinched. The day had been nothing special. Cloudy. Muggy. The kind of day where the sky hints at a storm but never delivers. I'd stayed late at a client meeting, but things wrapped up early. I texted him on the way home. Want anything from the bakery? He didn't reply. That silence should have meant something. But I still believed that silence just meant busy. I still believed loyalty was mutual. When I pulled into the driveway and saw his car already there, on a Wednesday, that struck me as strange. He always worked late on Wednesdays. But like always, I made excuses. Because that's what we're conditioned to do, explain away the discomfort. I stepped inside and kicked off my heels. Then I saw them, her shoes. Beige patent stilettos. Sharp. Familiar. I helped her choose them for her birthday. They looked like evidence. I should have walked away. But my legs moved on instinct. They carried me past the hallway we painted together, past the photo of us laughing in the vineyard, past all the memories I thought were safe. The bedroom door was ajar. Golden light spilled out. I didn't push it open. I didn't need to. She was the first thing I saw. My best friend since freshman year. Back turned. My robe slipping off her shoulder. My robe. The one I gave him for Christmas. The one he never wore when I asked. His hand was on her waist. He was laughing. So was she. As if I didn't exist. As if I hadn't poured 3 years of my life into a man who once whispered I was his peace. I don't remember breathing. I remember burning. My heart didn't shatter. It just stopped asking questions. I walked away slowly. Each step felt like cutting a cord. I sat on the couch like I was attending my own funeral. 10 minutes passed. Maybe more. Then I heard footsteps. He came out first, barefoot, shirtless, towel draped over his neck. When he saw me, he froze. Not out of guilt. Out of fear. Babe, he started. I stood up. Calm. Too calm. Then she appeared. Face pale. Robe tied tight. Hair messy with what they thought I wouldn't notice. She opened her mouth, maybe to say my name. I shut it with a single look. He turned to me. It's not what it looks like, he said. That line. That pathetic, worn-out excuse. I actually smiled. Oh no, I said. It looks exactly like what it is. My best friend in my robe after sleeping with my boyfriend in my bed. She flinched. He looked like he might cry. But I didn't yell. Didn't ask for answers. I just picked up my purse, turned around, and walked out. No shaking hands. No tears. No slammed door. I got in my car and drove until nothing outside felt familiar anymore. Somewhere after the 5th red light, I realized I wasn't heartbroken. I was done. The girl who would have begged? She didn't live here anymore. The woman standing in her place? She was ready to burn down every lie they thought they could bury. He came looking for me the next day. Not immediately, of course. He waited a full 24 hours. As if time would soften the betrayal. As if I might miss him more than I hated him. He showed up with my favorite coffee, looking exhausted. The kind of tired that says, I feel bad because I got caught, not because I hurt you. Can we talk? He asked, voice low. Hesitant. I stood in the doorway. No makeup. Hair up. Just leggings and a sweatshirt. But the look in my eyes made him hesitate. He held out the coffee like a peace offering. I didn't take it. I messed up, he began. It was a mistake we didn't mean. I laughed. Cold and sudden. He flinched. A mistake. I said. You tripped and accidentally landed between her legs? His jaw clenched. It wasn't like that. Then tell me, I said, tilting my head. What was it like? He had no answer. Of course he didn't. Men like him never do. Only apologies wrapped in excuses. You want me to feel bad for you? I asked. To believe you just got confused? That my best friend of 10 years somehow accidentally became the woman you wanted more than me? He looked down. You wouldn't understand. I stepped back and shut the door in his face.
That was my answer. The next time I saw him was 3 days later. He showed up at the bar where my friend Hannah and I were sitting. I was laughing, finally, the kind that reaches your chest, the kind you forget you still know how to do until it comes out of nowhere. He froze when he saw me. I saw the flicker in his eyes, recognition, then confusion. I wasn't supposed to look okay. I wasn't supposed to look better. But I did. Because while he was trying to process guilt, I was already making plans. He followed me outside when I went to call a car. Look, I deserve the hate, he said. But don't throw away everything we had. You already did. He stepped forward. She meant nothing. She meant enough. He looked like he wanted to say more, but he didn't. Because there was nothing left. No tears. No begging. No drama. He looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him. That's because he didn't. The woman he cheated on would have cried. I just smiled. Goodbye, I said, and got in the car. I didn't look back. That night, I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing out a list. Not of revenge. Of strategy. Because I didn't want to hurt him. I wanted to make him irrelevant. And I already knew exactly where to start. With the one person he'd never expect me to even look at. His older brother. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I didn't want mine cold. I wanted it plated on bone-white porcelain and handed to me by the man who haunted his brother's insecurities. I wanted it served with crystal-cut ruthlessness and paired with power so sharp it could slice through everything they thought they'd gotten away with. I wanted it served by Maddox Vale. His brother. The older one. The richer one. The one who had always made my ex nervous in a way I couldn't explain when we were together. He never said it directly, but I saw it in how he tensed when Maddox's name came up. The way he'd always try to one-up him in conversations he wasn't even part of. The way he'd avoid family events Maddox might attend, or brush off his career with phrases like, he got lucky. Right place, right time. Jealousy, like rot, has a smell. And I had ignored it for years. But now, I wasn't ignoring anything. It started simple. A fundraiser. Industry event. Semi-formal, full of people who knew how to pretend they cared about causes when really they just wanted better LinkedIn photos. I wasn't invited, not directly. But Hannah's cousin was in charge of PR and owed her a favor. I had a seat at a back table, name misspelled on the card, and a dress that fit better than most apologies I'd ever received. Maddox Vale was scheduled as the keynote. I didn't expect to actually meet him. Not really. I just wanted to be seen. Strategically. A whisper in a room he might glance toward. Just enough to plant an image. Make his name mean something different the next time his brother heard it. But fate, apparently, had better timing than I gave it credit for. I was standing near the edge of the rooftop balcony, fingers curled around a glass of sparkling water, because I needed to be clear-headed when this moment came, when a voice spoke from behind me. I hate these things. I turned. And there he was. Maddox Vale in the flesh. Tall. Sharp. Not handsome in the obvious way his brother tried to be, but in a colder, more deliberate sense. Black tailored suit. No tie. Hair perfectly imperfect, like he hadn't tried, but still looked better than most. His eyes were gray, cool, unreadable. The kind of eyes that had seen a lot and judged even more. I'm sorry. I asked, tilting my head just enough. He gestured with his drink. Events like this. Performative altruism. Half these people would set the world on fire if it made them trend. I laughed. It caught me off guard. He blinked once, then smiled. It was slight. Controlled. But real. You're not one of them? I asked. He shrugged. I fund things quietly. Public praise gives me hives. I looked at him a moment longer. That sounds honest. Dangerously so, he said. We stood there in silence for a breath too long. Then he asked, and you? Whose plus one are you? Just someone who snuck in the back, I said, sipping my drink. Sometimes it's better to be invisible until it matters. His head tilted, just a little. Like I'd said something he didn't expect. What's your name? He asked. I smiled. Ava. I didn't add a last name. I didn't need to. He wouldn't connect the dots yet. My ex's surname wasn't mine. Not legally. Never had been. But Maddox remembered me. I saw it flicker through his eyes a few beats later. My brother dated someone named Ava, he said slowly. Did he? I asked, feigning surprise. Small world. He let out a short breath, part laugh, part something else. He never deserved her. I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I looked past him, back into the crowd. Do you ever wonder what happens to the women men like your brother break? He followed my gaze. They survive. I turned back to him. What if they do more than survive? His eyes locked on mine. Then he lifted his glass. Then I'd say they're worth knowing. We didn't exchange numbers that night. We didn't flirt. We didn't even touch. But he remembered me. The next day, I received a message. From M. Vale. Subject: that conversation we didn't finish. Coffee? I'll pick the rooftop. I stared at it for 5 full minutes before responding. Only if the view is as good as last night. Game on. Our first meeting wasn't a date. Not technically. It was in a private office lounge he used for investors and partners. A high-rise that made my ears pop in the elevator. Minimalist design. A skyline view that didn't feel real. He offered me espresso. I asked for water. He didn't ask about my past. I didn't offer it. Instead, we talked business. Ideas. What I was building quietly, steadily. A consultancy for women navigating transitions, divorce, breakups, career pivots. I told him the name I was considering. Showed him a deck I hadn't let anyone else see yet. He asked smart questions. The kind that didn't talk down to me. The kind that sharpened my pitch without slicing into my pride. When I left, he walked me to the elevator and said, "Most people don't surprise me." I looked up at him. Most people don't try. His smirk was faint. You don't need to. That night, I dreamed of fire. Not destruction. Transformation. The next time I saw my ex, it was in passing. Grocery store. He looked thinner. Paler. She wasn't with him. I didn't stop. Just kept walking, heels clicking softly, air humming with a new kind of silence. He looked at me like he didn't know who I was anymore. He was right. Because the woman I'd become? She was standing beside the one man he'd spent his whole life trying and failing to be. And I hadn't even touched him yet. There's an art to seduction. It's not in the way you dress or the way you touch your lips when you're thinking. It's not about feigned innocence or exaggerated charm. No. The real seduction is control. The silence between questions. The refusal to rush. The ability to make someone wonder if they're the one chasing or being led. Maddox Vale was not an easy man to impress. But that was the point. If I'd shown up in red lipstick and short dresses, he'd have seen right through me. If I played the flirt, he would have tossed me in with every other woman who'd tried to court his empire. But I didn't. I let him think he was in control. I mirrored his energy, measured and distant. Spoke only when I had something worth saying. Walked into every room he invited me to like I was supposed to be there, and I never stayed longer than I needed to. I made sure to leave just before he wanted me to. I made myself scarce enough to be unforgettable. And it worked. The second time we met, he took me to an exhibit. Not dinner. Not drinks. A contemporary gallery after hours, curated by a friend of his. Quiet. Clean. Expensive without being loud. We moved slowly through the space. He walked with his hands in his pockets. I held a glass of wine I barely touched. There's something violent about this one, I said, stopping in front of a massive black and gold piece that looked like shattered glass held together by tension. It's called restraint, he replied. Of course it was. He glanced at me. What do you see? I paused. A person who didn't break. Just rearranged. He studied me then. Not the art. I didn't look away. From that point on, I could feel the shift. The awareness. The silent question he hadn't fully formed yet. It thrilled me. But I kept my distance. Every text I answered an hour later than I could have. Every invitation, I accepted with casual reluctance. Every look he gave me, I returned with just enough intensity to make him wonder. I wasn't trying to make him fall in love. I was making him curious. And men like Maddox didn't chase women. They chased puzzles. So I became one. He invited me into his spaces, his boardroom, his townhouse, his private library. Never physical, not yet, but intimate in all the ways that mattered. He started asking my opinion in meetings where I wasn't even on the agenda. Sent me articles at 2 a.m. with cryptic subject lines like, "Thoughts?" and "This reminded me of you." One afternoon, I found myself at his estate. The kind of house that had hallways longer than my last apartment lease. He was reviewing architecture plans with an assistant. I watched quietly, sipping tea while floor plans danced across a touchscreen. He turned to me and said, "What do you think?" "About what?" "This layout. The way it opens into the gallery wing." I shrugged slow. "It's beautiful, but cold." The assistant blinked. Maddox just smiled. That night, he walked me to my car and said, "No one ever tells me the truth." I looked up at him. "Then you're surrounded by liars." His hand hovered near my arm, like he wanted to touch me but thought better of it. "You're different," he said. "No," I whispered. "I'm just not scared of you." He didn't speak again. Just stepped back and watched me drive away. I gripped the steering wheel all the way home, heart slamming against my ribs. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about power. Control. It was about walking into every room my ex had tried to keep me out of and becoming the woman who owned it. And yet, I was still human. Because the closer Maddox got, the more I found myself wondering who was really playing who. One night, I opened my phone to find a message from him. "Dinner. Not business. Not art. Just us. Tomorrow at 8. If you say no, I'll pretend I never asked." I stared at the screen for 5 minutes before typing. "I'll come, but don't pretend. That's not your style." The restaurant was private. Discreet. Not a place for people who wanted to be seen, more like one for people who already were. He was already seated when I arrived. Dark shirt. No tie. Eyes that flicked up at me with something unreadable. Not desire. Not yet. Something deeper. Like curiosity layered with calculation. The waiter greeted me by name. That was the first time I realized he'd planned everything. But so had I. I didn't ask how he'd gotten my full name. Or my favorite wine. Or the fact that he'd chosen the exact table with the view I'd once told him I liked. We sat for over 2 hours. Talked about our childhoods. He told me about his father, the cold, hard man who built their family name like a fortress and left no room for softness. He made us compete for everything, Maddox said. Affection. Approval. Air. I didn't respond. Just reached for my glass and sipped. "And your brother?" I asked. He tilted his head, eyes darkening. He always thought he was the winner. I smiled slowly. "He's not." Maddox looked at me for a long time. "No," he said. "He's not." The check never came. It had already been paid before we sat down. He walked me to my car again, this time slower. We stood in the cool night air, silence pressing between us. "He hurt you," Maddox said suddenly. "I don't need to ask. I can see it in the way you hold back." "I'm not holding back," I whispered. "I'm choosing my moment." His jaw flexed. "What if I want you to stop choosing?" I stepped closer. Just an inch. Enough to let him feel the heat of my presence. "Then you'll have to earn it." His lips parted, just slightly. But I turned away before he could say anything. Got into my car. Drove home with shaking hands and a smirk on my face. Because I had him. And somewhere, my ex, the one who thought I'd cry forever, was about to realize that he hadn't just lost me. He'd handed me to his worst nightmare. And I was just getting started. I knew the moment would come. The one where she saw me, not across a coffee table or in an accidental scroll, but in real life. In heels. In control. In his orbit. I didn't just plan for it. I crafted it. The charity auction was public enough to matter, private enough to sting. Maddox's name was printed at the top of the guest list in bold serif letters. I made sure mine wasn't printed at all. I would arrive quietly at his side, like a question no one wanted to answer out loud. She wasn't supposed to be there. But of course she was. She looked exactly the same. Perfectly blown out hair. A fitted cocktail dress that screamed, "Notice me, I'm thriving," and a forced laugh that scraped against the inside of my ears like nails on glass. I knew that laugh. It was the one she used when she wanted people to think she wasn't nervous. She was laughing at something my ex had said. Of course he was there too, smug in a velvet jacket, playing the part of the wronged golden boy. I almost pitied him. Almost. But not quite. They didn't see me at first. Maddox had his hand lightly resting on the small of my back as we stepped through the entrance, stopping briefly to exchange polite nods with a local official. I wore black satin, timeless, sharp, deadly quiet. I didn't sparkle. I didn't need to. I felt her eyes before I turned. She was mid-sip, lipstick pressed to the rim of her flute when her gaze landed on me. Everything about her froze. Her posture. Her smile. Even the way she held the glass. It was so fast it could have gone unnoticed by anyone else. But I caught it. The flicker of fear. Because she knew. And the worst part for her? So did he. I didn't look at either of them for more than a heartbeat. I turned back to Maddox, tilted my head, and said, "I'm going to find a drink. Will you be all right without me?" He smiled. Not a yes, not a no. A look that said he never quite was when I walked away. I let my fingers trail against his wrist as I moved. Barely a touch. But enough. I felt them both watching me. Their guilt was thicker than the perfume in the air. I didn't head toward the bar. Not yet. I took a slow path around the gallery space, pausing here and there to admire things I didn't actually care about, abstract pieces mounted in silver frames, arrangements that meant nothing and everything depending on who was looking. She caught up with me by a sculpture of a fractured glass violin. Ava. I turned slowly, as if I hadn't already heard her heels clicking across the marble floor. Claire. Her name tasted metallic. Cold. Old. She stared at me, face unreadable. Not soft. Not sorry. Just guarded. "You look good," she said. "I know." She blinked. "Is this what it is now? A game?" "No," I said. "Games have rules." Her eyes flickered. "So you're really with him?" "Define with," I said. "Do I sleep in his bed?" "Yes." "Do I wake up beside him?" "Also yes." "But that's not what you're asking." She swallowed hard. "What do you want, Claire?" I asked. "An apology? Closure? Permission to pretend it didn't happen?" "You know it wasn't like that," she said quickly. "Did you fall?" I asked. "Trip and land face first into betrayal?" She flinched, and I smiled. "I was lonely," she said. "He told me you were pulling away. That you were cold. And you believed him." "I trusted him." "No," I said softly. "You wanted to be me. You always did." Her face cracked, just slightly. A tremor in the corners of her mouth. A flicker of something like grief. "He's miserable," she whispered. I raised an eyebrow. "And?" She stepped closer. "You think Maddox cares about you? You think you matter to him? He's not like his brother, he's worse. At least Liam feels something. Maddox doesn't let anyone in. He'll use you. And when he's done..." I laughed. I actually laughed. "Oh, Claire," I said. "You still think this is about being loved?" She stared at me, confused. "It's not," I said. "It's about being seen." Before she could respond, Maddox appeared beside me, placing a hand at the base of my spine again. Not possessive, just present. Like a statement made in silence. His gaze flicked briefly to Claire. There was no warmth. No recognition. Just dismissal. And then to me he said, "They're about to start the bidding. You'll want a good seat." I nodded. "Let's go." I didn't look back at her. But I knew she watched us walk away. I knew that every click of my heel on that floor echoed like a gunshot in her chest. We sat front row. I didn't care about the auction. I didn't care about the art. I cared about the message. Because in one night, I'd become something she never would be again. Relevant. And as Maddox leaned toward me to whisper something in my ear, something dry, something dark, something that made me laugh just enough to let them see how close we'd become, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. She tried to become me, and it cost her everything. He thought I would collapse. But I had risen. Not as a replacement. Not as revenge. As a woman they could no longer touch. And I hadn't even gotten started. When I told Maddox the truth, he didn't blink. I expected something: surprise, anger, disappointment. At the very least, a moment of silence to absorb the weight of what I was admitting. But all I got was a quiet, unreadable look and then a single word. Good. It happened late one night, after a bored dinner that felt more like a power play than a meal. We'd been seated beside each other, as always, our names printed together on the cards like it had always been that way. I wore black velvet, hair slicked back, makeup minimal but exacting. Every inch of me had become sculpted for this world. Polished. Precise. But something in me was restless. Maybe it was the way my ex looked at me across the room like I was a stranger who now had access to all the doors he used to lock. Maybe it was how Claire slithered in behind him, her hand on his arm like a trophy she couldn't quite keep polished. Or maybe it was the way Maddox hadn't touched me all night, but hadn't stopped watching me either. He didn't need to. He'd already claimed me in ways no one at that table could undo. Still, I needed to say it. To confess. Not because I owed him, but because I owed myself the truth. I needed to know what kind of man he really was and what kind of woman I was becoming by standing beside him. So after the dinner, I followed him into the lounge in his penthouse suite. The lights were low. Jazz played in the background, something smoky and slow. He poured himself a drink, offering one to me with a look. I declined. I needed my words clear. I have to tell you something, I said, arms crossed, pulse fluttering. He didn't turn around. Just waited. I didn't come to you by accident. That got his attention. He looked up, his gray eyes sharp but still calm. At first, I continued, it was strategy. Revenge. A way to make him pay. To make her see. You were the only name he couldn't say without sounding small. And I wanted that. Silence. I waited for it to stretch into something dangerous. But he simply sipped his drink and said, I figured. I blinked. You did? He nodded once. You were too composed for heartbreak. That stunned me. So you knew, I said slowly, and you still let me in? He walked toward me then, slowly, each step unhurried. When he stood just inches away, he looked down at me with something electric in his gaze, not anger. Not affection. Respect. No one gets close to me unless I let them, he said. And no one stays unless they prove they deserve to. I was using you, I whispered. He tilted his head. Were. It hung in the air between us like a held breath. I could have lied. I could have told him I still was. That none of it meant anything. That I was simply playing the long game. But I didn't. Because somewhere between the rooftop galleries and the long drives in silence, between the late-night messages and the way he remembered my words exactly, I had started to feel something real. And that terrified me. So I just said, it wasn't supposed to go this far. His gaze didn't soften. But it deepened. He reached out and touched a strand of hair that had come loose behind my ear, brushing it back with a care that felt louder than any declaration. Good, he said again. I like when things go off script. We didn't sleep together that night. We didn't kiss. He just let me sit with it. Let me breathe. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a woman who had to perform to be kept. I felt chosen. Not for a role, but for who I was becoming. From that moment on, everything changed. He started bringing me into things, real things. Not just parties or fundraisers or board dinners, but rooms where legacy was discussed. Where futures were made. He let me listen. Then he let me speak. And people listened to me because he listened to me. When he introduced me at a shareholders meeting as his strategic advisor, no one questioned it. When I offered insight on a media acquisition he was considering, and he changed course based on my recommendation, the entire room took notice. He gave me access to everything my ex used to hide behind. We became a team. One night, he handed me a key. No words, just placed it in my palm and waited. What is this? I asked, my fingers closing around the weight. He raised a brow. Control. It was access to his private residence in Milan. The one no one had ever been invited to, not even family. That was the night I kissed him for the first time. Not because I wanted to seduce him. Because I didn't have to. Because I'd finally stopped pretending this wasn't real. His hands were slow, certain, and when he pulled me into him, it wasn't possession. It was welcome. We didn't sleep that night. We didn't need to. We already knew. But with power comes clarity and consequences. Because the more he let me in, the more my ex started falling apart. It began with whispers. Board members wondering how I'd gotten so close. Reporters curious about the woman Maddox Vale now brought to every event. Investors reevaluating their interest in my ex's ventures because they knew Maddox had quietly withdrawn his support. And then came the bombshell. An anonymous expose about misappropriated funds, all traced back to projects Liam had managed with Claire. I didn't write it, but I knew who had leaked the documents. Maddox never said it outright. He didn't need to. He simply looked at me one morning over breakfast and said, "Some people have to learn the hard way." I didn't flinch. Because I had learned, too. I had learned what it meant to be underestimated, to be betrayed, to be discarded and replaced. And I had learned how to turn all of that into a kingdom. With him, I wasn't someone's mistake. I was the strategy and the reward. He looked at me like I was the weapon they thought they'd buried. And I let him, because I didn't need revenge anymore. I had something better. I had him. The first time someone called me Maddox Vale's muse, I laughed. It was at a dinner, one of those high-stakes, high-society things where half the guests were wearing borrowed diamonds and the other half were planning how to steal them. The man across the table had leaned in, swirled his wine, and said, "He's changed since you came along. Softer, focused. You've inspired him." Inspired. As if I was some delicate thing plucked out of obscurity and placed beside power like an accessory. Maddox said nothing. He never needed to. But I looked that man in the eye, lifted my glass, and said, "I'm not his muse. I'm his mirror." Because that was the truth. Whatever Maddox was becoming, I wasn't behind him. I was beside him. We weren't some twisted fairy tale of a billionaire rescuing a broken woman and shaping her into his ideal. We were two people who had been broken, reshaped ourselves, and decided, without words, that we would rise together. And I didn't just become his partner in name. I became his heir. He started bringing me into the fold in ways even his executive team didn't fully understand. I wasn't just included, I was trusted. I knew passwords, patterns, the codes to his decisions, and the spaces in his empire no one else had stepped into. When his CFO asked him once, half joking, half worried, what happens if she leaves? Maddox looked him straight in the eye and said, "Then she'll take it all." And that wasn't fear in his voice. It was pride. Because he didn't build a woman to stay small. He built room for a woman who could own everything. The whispers started, of course. Not just from the outside, but inside his circles. "She's moving too fast. She's not one of us. He'll regret this." I let them talk. Because while they were too busy underestimating me, I was learning everything they knew, faster, better, deeper. Maddox didn't teach me like a mentor. He tested me like a rival. He'd hand me a case study and say, "Tell me why this deal failed." He'd send me into meetings alone and say, "If they don't listen, don't come back." He made me stronger. Not for him. For me. And the stronger I got, the more the past started to disappear behind me like smoke from a bridge already burned. I stopped thinking about Claire. I stopped thinking about him. I even stopped needing to look over my shoulder for the people who once betrayed me. Because they weren't chasing. They were watching. I saw it one night at a gala, the kind broadcasted live, where everyone who wanted to matter showed up like it was a performance. He was there. Of course he was. Wearing a suit 2 sizes too expensive for a man barely holding on to what was left of his career. His posture was still proud, but his eyes? They were hollow. He didn't see me at first. I saw him. I always see first now. But when he did see me, he stared like he'd seen a ghost wearing the face of someone he used to own. I didn't smile. I didn't look away either. I just turned, extended my hand toward Maddox as he approached, and let him guide me to the stage. We were being honored that night for launching a new fund for underserved entrepreneurs. Not just a vanity project. A real one. One I had helped design, build, and lead. And when they said my name first, before his, I saw it in my ex's face. recognition, regret, and rage. Because I hadn't just become someone's girlfriend. I'd become someone he would never be allowed near again. Later that night, as we drove home in silence, Maddox reached across the console and took my hand. "Do you miss it?" he asked. I knew what he meant. The old life. The easier one. The quieter one. The one where I stayed small enough to be comfortable. I looked at him, fingers laced through his, and said, "Not even for a second." He smiled barely. Good. Because neither of us had any intention of going back. We were building something no one could take from us. And I wasn't just the girl who got hurt anymore. I was the woman who inherited the world. The knock on the door was soft, hesitant. Like he knew he shouldn't be here. I was barefoot, curled on the couch with a book I wasn't really reading, wrapped in one of Maddox's oversized sweaters. The air in the penthouse was quiet still. I was content. Settled in a way that had nothing to do with luxury and everything to do with peace. And then that knock. I knew it was him before I checked the screen. There's a silence people carry when they've been left behind by their own choices. He wore it like a second skin. Liam. I hadn't said his name in weeks. Months, maybe. And even now, I said it in my head like a question. He looked thinner. Not sickly, just hollowed out. Like someone who hadn't slept well in a long time. His clothes fit too loosely. His jaw was tighter. There were lines in his face that hadn't been there the last time we stood eye to eye. I opened the door halfway, no more than I needed to. He stared at me like he didn't expect me to answer. Like he was bracing himself for the version of me that used to cry. But she was gone. And I didn't flinch. "Hey," he said, voice rough. "Can we talk?" I leaned against the frame. "About?" He let out a breath. "You know what?" I waited. He rubbed the back of his neck. I was stupid. You didn't deserve what happened. I messed everything up. I tilted my head. Which part? Sleeping with my best friend, lying about it, or pretending it wasn't a choice? His throat moved as he swallowed. All of it. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. He stepped forward slightly. "I see you everywhere now. Online. In the news. With him. His name is Maddox." "I know," he said quickly. I guess I didn't realize." "What?" I cut in. "That I was capable of building something without you?" His eyes dropped. "That you'd leave me so far behind." That made me laugh. Not out of joy, more like disbelief. "You left yourself behind," I said. "The second you chose her over me, the second you lied to my face and slept in my bed like it didn't matter." "I was scared," he muttered. "So was I. And I didn't burn the people who loved me because of it." He looked at me for a long moment. "Does he know? Maddox? That you came to him because of me?" I crossed my arms. He knew from the beginning. "And he still stayed?" I gave a small, proud smile. He didn't stay. He stood beside me. Liam looked wrecked. Not just hurt. Lost. Like all the arrogance he once wrapped himself in had finally peeled away. "I miss you," he whispered. "No, you miss the version of me who didn't know better." His jaw clenched. "We were good once. And then you ruined it." The silence stretched. Then a new voice entered the room, low, calm, steady. "She asked you to leave yet?" I didn't even have to turn. "Maddox." He stepped into the doorway behind me, dressed in black slacks and a soft charcoal sweater, sleeves pushed up, a glass of bourbon in one hand. He looked like everything Liam used to pretend to be, and none of it felt forced. Liam stiffened. "I didn't come to fight." "Good," Maddox said. "Because you'd lose." I didn't touch Maddox. I didn't need to. We stood close enough that Liam could see the ease in it, the connection he would never understand. "You think this is going to last?" Liam asked him, a flash of bitterness slipping through. "She came to you to get to me." Maddox smiled, slow and lethal. "And now she's not thinking about you at all." Liam flinched. I stepped forward, blocking Maddox's view, not because I was protecting Liam, but because I was finished. "You should go." His eyes searched mine, desperate now. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." "You did," I said softly. "Now go be sorry somewhere else." He lingered. hoping, maybe, that something in me would crack. But I had nothing left to give him. And so he left. I closed the door behind him. Silence returned. Maddox didn't speak right away. He just set his glass down, then reached for me, pulling me gently into his arms. "You okay?" he asked against my hair. I nodded. I think that was the last piece I needed. He kissed the side of my head. "You were terrifying." I was proud. I laughed quietly into his chest. For the first time in years, I didn't feel hollow after seeing Liam. I didn't feel rage or grief or even longing. I just felt done. I was no longer chasing closure. I was standing in something better. A life where I didn't need to be forgiven or chosen, because I had chosen myself. And Maddox? He didn't save me. He simply saw me. It was almost poetic, the way it all crumbled. Not loudly, not dramatically, but slowly, publicly, like watching a sandcastle being eaten by the tide. One wave at a time. One piece at a time. And no one ran in to save it. Liam lost everything he thought made him untouchable. It started with the investors. Quiet withdrawals. Meetings that were suddenly rescheduled indefinitely. His emails stopped pinging as often. Then came the calls, tense, clipped, full of veiled accusations. People he once toasted with were suddenly unavailable for drinks. Then the press got wind of the financial inconsistencies. The whispers Maddox had seeded began to bloom like rot beneath the surface of Liam's carefully curated empire. They didn't link it to me. Not directly. But those who needed to know? They knew. The same reporters who used to call him a rising star now labeled him reckless. The woman he betrayed me for? Claire? She was nowhere to be seen when his apartment was seized for unpaid rent. I heard she tried to sell her story. Framed herself as the victim in a tangled love triangle between two brothers. No one bit. No one cared. Because in the end, the world doesn't applaud traitors who fall. It moves on. And me? I didn't need to gloat. I didn't post quotes about karma. I didn't drop hints or subtweets. I just kept walking forward, one power move at a time. Maddox handed me the reins to one of his satellite companies, one he didn't want anymore, but trusted me to rebrand. I gave it a new name, a new purpose. And with it, I hired women like me. The ones who had been made small. Who'd been used and discarded and told to take the high road. I didn't give them the high road. I gave them power. We built faster than I expected. Cleaner. Sharper. Our reputation spread through word of mouth, not marketing. And soon, I wasn't just Maddox's partner. I was a founder. A force. The money came. But the peace came louder. It came in the mornings I woke up without anxiety burning behind my ribs. In the evenings where Maddox and I sat on the rooftop terrace and didn't have to say much at all. In the long, quiet looks exchanged across boardrooms where I knew exactly what he was thinking. You did this. We did this. And still, even in peace, there were echoes. One day I passed Liam on the street. I was with Hannah, both of us laughing, arms full of samples for a campaign shoot. It was spring. I wore soft pastels, not armor. I didn't see him at first, but she did. He stood across the intersection, near a cafe he used to drag me into after brunch, talking to someone who clearly wasn't listening. His clothes didn't quite fit. His posture had changed, collapsed inward, like the weight of his own mistakes had finally made themselves at home on his back. He turned and saw me. I didn't flinch. He didn't wave. He just looked tired. I looked away first. Because nothing he could offer, not apology, not memory, not pity, could give me anything I hadn't already earned for myself. Later that night, Maddox found me standing at the edge of our terrace, staring into the city lights. "Long day?" he asked. I nodded. Just thinking. He came behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist, rested his chin on my shoulder. "About him?" he asked softly. "No," I said. "About me." And it was the truth. Because Liam wasn't my ending. He was the catalyst. The match that burned the girl I used to be. And from her ashes, I had built a woman he'd never get close to again. People still talk about him sometimes. Not in the way they used to back then. His name buzzed in every room like a promise. like a man to watch. Now, it lingers in conversations like an aftertaste. Something people try to politely swallow and move on from. I don't correct the stories. Not when they say he was brilliant once, not when they whisper about how he had it all and somehow let it slip. I don't tell them what he did. I don't bring up Claire. I don't bring up the bedroom, or the laugh, or the look he gave me when he realized I wasn't going to beg. I don't need to. Because the woman I am now doesn't exist in relation to him. I live in penthouses he'll never get invited to. I sit on boards he's no longer allowed to pitch to. I wear silence like a diamond necklace, elegant, unbreakable, impossible to look away from. And Maddox? He never introduced me as his girlfriend. Not once. The first time he spoke my name in public, it was on stage, at a summit filled with industry leaders and sharks dressed in suits. He stepped up to the mic, scanned the crowd, and said, "She's not my better half. She's my equal. And the best decision I ever made." I didn't cry, but my heart broke open in a way that wasn't pain. It was pride. It was arrival. It was the opposite of the hollow I used to carry when I sat next to a man who introduced me as just Ava. Now I hear my name in meetings and see heads turn. I hear it whispered with respect. Sometimes envy, but always with weight. Ava, the one who came from nowhere and built something untouchable. Ava, the woman no one saw coming. At the latest gala, they put me on the cover of the magazine wrap-up. Not Maddox. Me. The headline read, "She took the fall, then took the crown." He framed it and hung it in his office. Not because he needed to brag, but because he was proud. There are still nights when I remember the girl I used to be. The one who stood in a doorway, holding her breath, watching everything she thought was sacred unravel in front of her. The one who didn't scream. The one who just walked out. Sometimes I want to go back to her, wrap my arms around her and whisper, "It won't be fair. It won't be quick. But you will rise." And she does. I did. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood that some fires aren't meant to be put out. They're meant to burn away everything that was never real to begin with. Now, I don't chase love. I don't perform for approval. I don't keep people close just because they've been there a long time. I choose. And I walk away when I'm no longer seen. But with Maddox? He sees me. Every day. Even when I don't say a word. We don't talk about Liam. We don't need to. Because I didn't just win. I became the prize. And nothing tastes sweeter than freedom dressed in my own name.